Baik.
The floor is yours.
Good morning, lectors and my friends. My name is Stephen G. from 22A Mathematics Study Program from State University of Jakarta. With my supporting lectors, Miss Puspita Sari, I will present my final assignment poster material entitled Exponent. Exponent is a real number that is multiplied by the number itself by the sum of its power. For example, 5 to the power of 3, or you can see my writing. That means the number 5 is multiplied by 5 3 times. Or you can say 5 multiplied by 5 and multiplied by 5 3 times. Exponents are basically used to simply saying or writing a number that is quite long in number. For example, you can see the number below. If the value of the number is called or written, it will be too long and of course difficult to remember. Even though it's so long, you can just write it in 7 to the power of 10. Isn't that simple? There are many applications of exponent numbers in the field of life. Of course, we will not discuss all of them one by one. Some example of the application of exponent numbers are as follow in my posters. As you can see, there is some field I put in my poster as field of architecture, military field, economics field, field of statistics. I will explain from the field of architecture. From this field of architecture, exponents are used to measure the area of flats, squares, and circles, as well as to measure the volume of cubes, cones, spheres, and cylinders. As you can see, the formula I have write the formula in the following posters I have made. There is a form of cubes formula, cones, spheres, and cylinders. As you can see, that include a exponent in that formula. That means exponents are used for the field of architecture in real life. For making building, for example, or making a construction. Next, we move to military field. As you can see in my poster, there is a artillery, or you can say it cannon. The shoots is using measures of the parabolic formula. To measure the accuracy of a cannon shoot, the trajectory of the bullet projectile in the cannon is parabolic. In the parabola function equation formula, there are exponent number in it, as you can see in my poster. Next, we move to the economic fields. Exponents in economics are used to determine the value of money for goods in the future. In macroeconomics, it is very important to know the value of money for goods in the future so that inflation rate can be predicted. So that problem can be anticipated that will occur. Apart from that, in macroeconomics, by knowing the exchange rate of money for goods in the future, you can know whether the investment funds that will be spent are profitable or not. Next, we move to the field of statistics. As you can see, there is formula of z-table and t-table. Exponents are used for t or z test or abnormal distribution data in statistics. It's very important. In the formula, it includes exponents in the formula. So exponents are also used in the fields of statistics. So, the conclusion is exponents are useful in architecture, military, economics, and statistics, and many other in everyday life. That's all for me. Thank you. If there's
Okay.
something wrong wrote, I apologize. If you have question or suggestion from lectures or my friend about my poster and my presentation, you can ask it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Stefan, for your presentation. Now I will invite for the two questioners who want to ask to Stefan.
Uh, I have a question for Steven. Sebelumnya apa suara saya terdengar?
Terdengar,
Yes.
silakan.
Okay, before I appreciate your presentation, Steven, your present is good. But I have a question about application of exponents tadi. Is there any use of exponent in biology? Tadi kan udah, I'm sorry, tadi udah ada statistik, Asper dan lain-lain. Apa ada di bidang biologi tadi? Apa di bidang biologinya? Thank you, Steven.
Okay, thank you for the question, Owan.
Do you want to answer directly or do you want to wait for another
Wait,
question?
the second question, ma'am.
Okay, please, second question. Okay, maybe you can answer first, Stefan.
Okay, ma'am. Okay, can you see my share screen?
Yes, Steven.
Okay, I will explain the use of exponent in biology. The application of exponential function in biology is usually used to calculate the growth of bacteria. Example include in biology, there is the growth of certain of amoeba. For example, growth follows the function exponential functions. AT is equal to AO times 2T, where AO is the number of amoeba at the beginning of the observation and T is the time when the observation occurred in minutes. If it known that at the beginning of the observation at 9 o'clock there was 100 amoeba, then how many amoeba will there be after the observation is made at 10 past 9? The solution is AO is equal to 100 amoeba. T is equal to 10 minutes and AT is equal to AO is multiplied by 2. T is equal to 100 x to 10, 100 x 1024. So the is equal to 100 2400. So there will be 100,400 amoeba at 10 past 9 o'clock observation. Did it answer your question, Ulwan?
Okay, Steven. Clear for me. Thank you, Steven.
You're
Okay,
welcome.
who wants to give the second question? Penanya kedua siapa?
Sebelumnya, apakah suara saya sudah terdengar, Mem?
Terdengar.
Ya, makasih. Di sini Steven, saya mau nanya, what
Can you
is
mention
the...
your name? Karena Ibu susah lihat namanya gitu. Who is speaking now?
Grace Pasaribu.
Okay, thank you.
What is the relationship between exponents and logarithms? Apakah pertanyaan saya jelas, Stephen?
Yes, thank you, Grace.
Ya, terima
Thank you for the
kasih.
question. I will explain the relationship between exponent and logarithm. Can you see my share screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I will explain the relationship between exponent and logarithm. The relationship between exponent and logarithms is very close because both are mathematical operations that reverse its order. If we have a number x raised to the power with exponent a, then we can find the logarithm of x with base of a. On the other hand, if we have the logarithm value of a number with base a, then we can find the exponent value using the formula exponent formula. This relationship between exponent and logarithm very useful in various mathematical applications, such as in calculating compound interest in business or in calculating probability in science. Exponent and logarithm are two very important and related mathematical concepts. Exponents are used to enlarge number by squaring them, while logarithms are used to reverse the exponent operation. These two concepts are closely related and are used often in various mathematical applications. Did it answer your question, Grace?
Okay, Stephen. It's clear, Stephen. Thank you.
You're welcome, Grace.
Okay, thank you very much for Stefan's presentations and all the two questions. Now let's move on to the second presenter. Who is the second presenter?
Saya, ma'am.
Okay, Gaitsa, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, ma'am.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, Mrs. Puspitasari and friends. On this occasion, I will present the results of my work in the form of a poster about simple interest. Before starting the presentation, please allow me to introduce myself first. My name is Gaitsa Zaira Safa from the class of Mathematics A 2022, which has a student identification number ending in 47. Now, I will immediately explain the content of the material in the following poster. As I said before, I chose material about simple interest. Why did I choose this material? The answer is because the concept of simple interest is very important in the field of business and finance, as it serves as a foundation for understanding how loans, investments, and most financial instruments work. Now it's time for us to understand the material about the simple interest itself. When we hear about simple interest, we must immediately think, what is a simple interest? Simple interest is a way of calculating interest on a loan, deposit, or investment that is based only on the initial principal amount, and the interest remains constant throughout the entire term of the loan or investment. Then, how to calculate the simple interest? To calculate the simple interest, we need to use this formula. SI is equal to P times R times T, where SI is simple interest, P is principal amount, R is rate of interest, and T is time in years. For the rate of interest is usually in the form of a percent, so we have to convert it to decimal form. Then for the time, if the time is in months, so the T must be divided by 12. And if the time is in days, so the T must be divided by the number of days in that years. Then there is the second formula, which is amount is equal and how to calculate simple interest using the following example in terms of a loan. Jacob borrows $20,000 at an interest rate of 7% per year. How much interest will Jacob owe, and the amount of money does he has to return after 1 year? For the solution, first we will find the amount of interest using the simple interest formula. From the question, it is known that the principal amount of money is $20,000. The rate of interest is 7% per year, and the time is 1 year. For the rate of interest, we must to convert it to decimal form. 7% is equal to 7 divided by 100, and the quotient is 0.07. Then, the steps to calculate the interest are as follows. First, substitute each value into the simple interest formula, which is SI is equal to P times R times T. The value of P is $20,000, the value of R is 0.07, and the value of T is 1. So the equation becomes SI is equal to $20,000 times 0.07 times 1. Then we can directly multiply all of the values. The product of $20,000 times 0.07 times 1 is $1,400. So we got the amount of the simple interest, which is $1,400. Next, we will find the amount of money that Jacob has to return, including interest. First, substitute the value of principal amount and the value of simple interest into the amount formula, which is A is equal to P plus SI. The value of P is $20,000 and the value of SI is $1,400. So the equation becomes A is equal to $20,000 plus $1,400. Then add $20,000 to $1,400, and the sum is $21,400. So we got the amount of money that Jacob has to return, including interest after 1 year, is $21,400. After knowing and understanding how to calculate simple interest, then of course we will get the benefits. The benefits that will be obtained are: first, it helps in financial planning. By understanding how to calculate simple interest helps you to calculate how much interest you will earn on an investment, or how much you will owe on a loan over a specific period. Second, it aids in comparing different financial instrument options, such as different investment or loan options based on their interest rates and time durations. Third, it helps you to make financial decisions swiftly. There are so many benefits, right? That's why it is important to understand the concept of simple interest. Last, before closing the presentation, I will provide a conclusion from the previous explanation. Simple interest is a way of calculating interest on a loan, deposit, or investment that is based only on the initial principal amount. Simple interest is calculated by finding the product of the principal, the rate of interest, and the time. By understanding how to calculate simple interest, we get many benefits, such as in terms of financial planning, comparison of options, and quick decision making. Therefore, it is imperative to comprehend how simple interest functions in various financial contexts. Maybe that's all I can say and explain in today's presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Gaitsa, for the presentation. Okay, who will ask for Gaitsa?
I
Who
am
will give
Aura Malika,
question?
ma'am. I want the permission to ask Geisa.
Okay, please.
Geisa, I want to ask about your present poster materials. Where is simple interest used in real life? Okay, thank you, Aura, for the question. Maybe please give me a few minutes to find the answer. Or maybe we can next for the second question, ma'am.
Okay, in the meantime, maybe the second question.
Okay, I'm Iksan Agustianto. I want to ask to Getsa, the question is, besides simple interest, we also know that there are compound interest. What makes you prefer simple interest over compound interest? Can you hear clearly, Getsa?
Thank you.
Can you
Question.
write the question? Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes, you can write the question also in the chat box.
Okay, let me answer for the first question from Aura. The question is, where is simple interest used in real life? Simple interest is used in various real-life financial and business scenarios. Some common examples of the application of simple interest are first, car loans. Many car loans use simple interest, where the borrower pays interest on the original loan amount throughout the loan term. The monthly payments include both principal and interest. Second, in commercial loans, small business may use simple interest loans for working capital or expansion purpose. The interest is calculated on the initial loan amount. And the third is in certificates of deposit. When you invest in a certificate of deposit, you earn simple interest on your investment or a fixed term. The interest is typically paid out at the end of the term or at regular intervals. It is clear, Aura?
Okay, Gaitsa, I can understand the answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for the second question is from Iksan, and the question is, besides simple interest, we also know that there are compound interest. What makes us prefer simple interest over compound interest? What makes us someone prefer simple interest over compound interest is firstly based on ease of calculation. Simple interest is often easier to calculate and understand, especially in the context of loans or investment with short time periods. This makes it more popular in case where fast calculations are required. Then the second is based on transparency. Simple interest allows you to clearly see how much interest will be charged on the principal amount in a certain period, without having to pay attention to the accumulation of interest. Then the last one is based on its implementation. In terms of loans, simple interest is more profitable for the borrower than compound interest because with simple interest, the amount of interest will remain the same throughout the term of the loan, thus keeping the overall interest payments lower compared to compound interest where the amount of interest increases over time. It is clear, Iksan?
Clear, Gaitsa. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But maybe that's all for the presentation and thank you for all of the question. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Gaitsa, for the presentation. Now let's move on to the next presenter, Rahmi Dwi. The floor is yours.
Thank you, ma'am.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone. My name is Rahmi Dwi Syafira with registration number 13056222025 from Mathematics major. On this occasion, I would like to present the results of my poster about the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is one of the most famous formulas in mathematics. It's been called nature's secret code and nature's universal rule. But do you know what the Fibonacci sequence is? And do you know that the Fibonacci sequence is found in nature? If you don't already know, this poster aims to explain the Fibonacci sequence and to show the Fibonacci sequence in nature. First of all, I will explain the history of the Fibonacci sequence. This sequence is named after Leonardo Pisano, who was also known as Fibonacci, an Italian mathematician who introduced it to the Western world in his book Liber Abaci in 1202. In Liber Abaci, Fibonacci wrote about something called the rabbit problem. It went like this. A certain man put a pair of rabbits in a place surrounded by a wall. How many pairs of rabbits can be produced from that pair in a year? If it is supposed that every month each pair begets a new pair from which the second month on becomes productive, Fibonacci wrote a series of numbers to solve the problem. It looks like this: 0, followed by 1, followed by another 1, followed by 2, followed by 3, followed by 5, followed by 8, followed by 13, followed by 21, followed by 34, followed by 55, and so on. There are 0 rabbits in the first month. In the second month, 1 pair of rabbits move in, but they don't have any babies for the first 2 months. In the fourth month, a new pair of rabbits is born, and another in the fifth. By the sixth month, both the first and second pairs are having a pair of babies every month. These numbers are growing quickly. Did you notice the pattern? After 0 and 1, each new number is the sum of the 2 numbers before it. This is the Fibonacci sequence. The individual numbers within the sequence are called Fibonacci numbers. The Fibonacci sequence can also be expressed using this equation. F sub n equals f sub n minus 1 plus f sub n minus 2, where n is greater than 1. Fibonacci numbers can be illustrated as a spiral with squares representing the widths of the numbers in the sequence. The squares fit nicely together, forming the spiral. In this example, 5 plus 8 equals 13, then 8 plus 13 equals 21, and so on. Now, let's move on to the example of the Fibonacci sequence around us. The Fibonacci sequence is found all throughout nature. It is a naturally occurring pattern. Just take a look at the pattern it creates, and we can instantly reasonize how this sequence works in nature like an underlying universal grid. Here are some examples of Fibonacci in nature. First, we can find it in the flower petals. The number of petals in a flower consistently follows the Fibonacci sequence.
For example, in this poster, buttercups have 5 petals. And then, the Fibonacci sequence can also be seen in the way 3 branches form or split. One trunk grows until it produces a branch, resulting in 2 growth points. The main trunk then produces another branch, resulting in 3 growth points. Then, the trunk and the first branch produce two more growth points, bringing the total to 5. This pattern continues following the Fibonacci numbers. After all the explanations that have been given, we can conclude that the Fibonacci sequence is an infinite sequence that starts with 0 and 1 and continues in such a way that each number is the sum of the previous two numbers. And the Fibonacci sequence can be easily found in nature around us, such as in flowers and trees. So, that's all my poster presentation about Fibonacci sequence. I hope you all understand. But if you have any questions, you can ask after this. Sorry if there are any mistakes and thank you for your time and attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, I am Novita Lutfianda. I have permission to ask Rahmi. Okay, Rahmi, your poster is great, but I have a question for you. The question is, why is it important to study Fibonacci patterns in nature? Is it clear, Rahmi?
Iya, Nak. Okay, thank you for the question, Novita. Let me answer your question. The question is, why is it important to study Fibonacci patterns in nature? So my answer is, because studying Fibonacci patterns in nature can give us insights into how organisms and natural systems optimize growth and research distribution. It also highlights the mathematical elegance found in the natural world. So I think that's my answer. Is it clear?
It's clear, Rahmi. Thank you for the answer.
Okay, it's turn now.
Masih bertanya.
Sorry.
Thank you for the inspiring presentation. I'm very happy listen to your presentation and learn many new things. But let me ask you, Rahmi, can you give some examples of real-life application of the Fibonacci sequence? Is it clear?
Yeah, it's clear, Sharifah. So, thank you for the question, Sharifah. Let me answer your question. Question is, can you give some examples of real-life applications of the Fibonacci sequence? So my answer is yes, the Fibonacci sequence has many applications in real life, such as computer algorithms, coding theories, security coding, and data structures use Fibonacci numbers. It is also used in finance, trading, and stock markets for technical analysis, and even in art and design to create visually appealing compositions. So that's my answer. Is it clear, Sharifah?
Very clear. Thank you, Rahmi.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any more question for Rahmi?
Tadi sudah sebelumnya Novita.
All right, okay. Thank you, Rahmi, for the presentation. Now let's move on to the next presenter for today, Debbie.
Yes, ma'am. Aku izin share screen ya, ma'am.
Ya, silakan. We cannot hear the sound.
Ini bisa suaranya ya. Thank you.
Ya.
Oke, sebentar ya, ma'am.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Devi Brianti from the third semester Mathematics Study Program. In this video, I would like to talk about permutation and combination. So, mathematical fundamentals like permutation and combination can be used to determine how to arrange and choose the object in set. Combination refers to choosing objects without respect to order, and permutation refers to placing objects in specific sequence. And in mathematics, we use more precise language. First, when the order doesn't matter, it is combination, and then when the order doesn't matter, it's a permutation. Then, to help you to remember, think permutation is position, and there's we have a lock. We should really call this permutation lock. Okay, we talk about permutation. There are basically two types of permutation. First, repetition is allowed, such as the lock above, it called P333, and then 2, no repetition. For example, the first 3 people in a running race, you can be first and second.
And then we talk about permutation with repetition. These are the easiest to calculate. When a thing has n different types, we have n choice each time. So the formula is simply n to the r, where n is the number of things to choose from and we choose r of them. Repetition is allowed and order matters. Okay, next we talk about permutation without repetition. Without repetition, our choice gets reduced each time. But how do we write it mathematically? Answer, we use the factorial function. The factorial function just means to multiply a series of descending natural numbers. The formula is written and factorial is divided by the quantity n minus r factorial, where n is the number of things to choose from and we choose r of them. No repetition order matters. Next topic is combination. There are also two types of combination. Remember, the order does not matter now. 1. Repetition is allowed, such as coin in your pocket. And 2. No repetition, such as allow 3 numbers. Combination with repetition, the formula is written the factorial of the sum of r and n minus 1 divided by product of the factorial of r and the factorial of n minus 1, where n is the number of things to choose from and we choose r of them. Repetition allowed, order doesn't matter. Next, we talk about combination without repetition. This is how lotteries work. The numbers are drawn on a time and we have the lucky numbers. No matter what order we win. The formula is written the factorial of n divided by the quantity of the factorial n minus r multiplied by 1 divided the factorial of r equals the factorial of n is divided by the factorial of r times the quantity of the factorial n minus r. And I have some examples. First is permutation example. In the log above, there are 10 numbers to choose from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and we choose 3 of them. The answer is 10 multiplied 3 times 10 equals 10 to the third equals is 1000. And then I have combination example 2. Is how many ways can first and second place be awarded to 10 people? We can answer the factorial of 10 divided by the quantity of the factorial 10 minus 2 equals. Then the factorial of 10 divided by the quantity of the factorial 8 equals 3,628,000. Good, that was a lot to absorb, so maybe difficult words again to be sure. In conclusion, with just knowing how this formula works is only half the battle. Figuring out how to interpret a real-world situation can be quite hard, but at least you know the 4 variations of ordered tasks or does not matter and repeats are or are not allowed. That's all for my presentation on permutation and combination. Please apologize for the shortcomings in the presentation of this material. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you so much, Debbie. Who wants to give questions for Debbie? Okay, 2 questions, please. Silakan yang mau bertanya siapa ya di sesi ini? Silakan langsung bertanya ya, soalnya Ibu nggak bisa lihat.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for your presentation, Debbie. Okay, once again. Thank you for your presentation, Debbie. To Debbie. Let's respond my question. Can you find out a possibility in everyday life using mathematics? Exactly. Find out a possibility in everyday life using permutation and combination. Small. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rafli. Okay. Next.
No, it's Nita's turn.
Yes, thank you, Rafli, for the question. Next to Nita.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. My name is Nita Putrasari. I have a question for Debbie. The question is, can you be a gambling master if you study about permutation and combination? Thank you, Debbie.
Okay, thank you for the question, Rafli and Nita. I want to answer a question from Rafli. Okay, first itu, yes, you can. Why not a possibility in every day? We can use permutation and combination so you can calculate about something will appear. Okay, for the second question from Nita is, can you be a gambling master if you study about permutation and combination? Yes, we can. Permutation and combination are calculation that can tell you what percentage chance something will appear. That's from answer from me. Thank you for the question, Rafli and Nita. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, is that all? Do you have more questions? Audience? No? Okay, let's move on to the next presenter, our fifth presenter for today. I'm Rizky Rahman. The floor is yours.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, on these occasions, I will present the results of my work related to the transportation model posters in the form of a short video. Let's take a look together. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name
Suaranya
is
kekecilan, sorry.
Rahman Hakim, and you can call me Rizky. I'm from Mathematics Study Program, State University of Jakarta. On this occasion, I will share a little knowledge related to one of the submaterials in mathematics, namely the transportation model with the northwest corner method. So, what is NWC? Let's start with the definitions. The NWC, or northwest corner, is a method for creating an initial table by allocating the distribution of goods, starting from the cell located in the top left corner of the table, or starting from the cell located in the first column and row. The NWC method was invented by two reliable mathematicians, Abraham Charnes and William C. Hooper. Then this method was further developed by George Dantzig, so that we recognize NWC as it is today. Then how do we use it? First, we fill in the cell or box starting from the top left corner, then allocate the maximum largest quantity according to the need, so that it's possible to fulfill the existing demand. Next, we move to the box on the right if the supply is sufficient, but if not, move directly to the box below it according to the demand. Then continue moving until the supply runs out and the demand is fulfilled. And here we also have an example of applying the NWC method to a table. There is the initial table and the final table after operating the NWC step. And to find the minimum cost, we just need to multiply the need with the shipping cost, then just add it up as usual. The advantage of the northwest corner method is that it's faster in decision making, and without being too complicated in the placement of units to be distributed to the place of demand. Meanwhile, the disadvantage of this method is that it doesn't allocate as many products as possible to sell box that has the smallest transportation cost. And in other words, its product allocation doesn't pay attention to the cost per unit. And now that we've covered everything about the NVC method, and we should also know what the purpose of this method. The main purpose of transportation method is to organize the distributions from sources that provide the same product to place that need it optimally at the lowest cost. Meanwhile, the NVC method only calculates the initial cost before being optimized using other methods. And so this is the conclusions we can get from these posters. Are the transportation problem discuss the distributions of a commodity or product from a number of source or supply to a number of destinations or demand, with the aim of minimizing transportation costs. One way to solve the transportation method, namely the northwest corner method. In making these posters, I look for reference from research, and I have listed them on the posters. Well, that's all the exposures and the informations that I can share. Hopefully, it can be a new insight for all. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Rizky. I will invite for the two questioners who want to give questions to Rizky. Silakan langsung saja ya.
I want asking to Rizky. Okay, for the first, thank you for your presentation. I have a question. The question is, what is the purpose of this transportation model and why should it exist? That is my question. Thank you, Rizky.
Okay, thank you. Maybe the questions can be accommodated first, ma'am.
Okay, no problem. Who wants to do the second question?
Izin bertanya.
Yes.
Sebelumnya saya izin off cam karena lagi kurang enak badan. Thank you for your presentation, Rizky. I want to asking to your presentation. In the table on the poster, it is assumed that demand and supply are equal. Then, how do we solve the case if the demand and supply are different? And you clear, Rizky?
Yes, it's clear, Jason. Okay, maybe I will answer the questions from Debbie. The questions number 1. What is the purpose of this transportation model? The main purpose of these transportation models is to optimally organize the distributions from a source that provides the same product to where it's needed at the lowest cost. However, the NVC method only calculates the initial cost before optimizing using other methods. Maybe this method can be continued to get the optimal solutions by using the stepping stone method or MODI method. Is it clear, Debbie?
Yes, Rizky, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Debbie. Okay, next, I will answer to question number 2 by Jason. Maybe we refresh our memory a little bit regarding transportation methods that transportation methods are divided into two types, namely balanced and unbalanced transportation methods. In the case of balanced and equal supply and demand, we can utilize the NVC transportation model. But the question is, what if the demand and supply in the market are different? Then we can use another method, which is the unbalanced transportation method. How to do it? If you still remember, there is something called dummy variable to make demand and supply balance first. Then we can use this NVC method to solve the transportation problem until the initial solutions. And if we want to process the optimal solutions to the optimal solutions, we can utilize advanced methods such as stepping stone or MODI method. Is it clear, Jason?
Yes, thank you, Rizky.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Okay, thank you for the presentation and for the two questions. Don't forget to write down your summary of question and answer session, because sometimes if the connection is lagging, I cannot hear you clearly. Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
okay.
Yeah. Now let's move on to the sixth presenter of today, Nita Putri. The floor is yours.
Okay, ma'am, izin sini ya, ma'am.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning everyone. My name is Nita Putri Lestari with name 13056222070. On this occasion, I will explain a poster about trigonometry. Previously, here there was a history of trigonometry, which comes from Greek. Trigonon, which means triangle, and metro, which means to measure. After that, here there is the inventor of sine, cosine, tangent, namely Al-Marwazi. Next, here is the meaning of trigonometry and the purpose of studying trigonometry. Trigonometry is a part of mathematics that studies the relationship between the sides and angles of a triangle. Trigonometry can be used to measure distance, height, and width of objects that cannot be measured directly. Next, the application of trigonometry is the first to calculate astronomy, the second to create a topographic map of the Earth to determine the area of an area, the third to determine the Qibla direction using spherical triangle measurements. Next, going into the basic material studying trigonometry, I will explain the rules for right triangles. In the picture, there is a triangle with angle ABC. The line from corner A to corner C is called opposite. The line from corner A to corner B is called adjunction, and the line from corner B to corner C is called hypotenuse. For right triangle rules, sin theta is equal to A over B equals opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine theta equals B over C equals adjunction over hypotenuse, and tangent theta equals A over B equals opposite over adjunction. Next, there are special angles consisting of 0 degrees, 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60 degrees, and 90 degrees. For a sine of 0 degrees, it produces 0. For a sine of 30 degrees, it produces half, and so on. Likewise, with cosine and tangent, you can see it in the table. Next, there are examples of problems that are difficult to explain Regarding trigonometry, look at the picture. It is known that someone who is on top of a lighthouse, which is 45√3 meters high, is observing an object below him with a distance of 135 meters between the object and the lighthouse. The angle of depression formed is blah blah blah. The solution to this problem is that it looks like a right triangle in the image. Angle ABC is the same as angle alpha because they are facing each other. By using the tangent concept can be obtained. Tangent alpha is equal to 45√3 over 135 is equal to 1 over 3√3. In can alpha is equal to 30 degrees. So the angle of depression formed is 30 degrees. There is a conclusion. As in the example problem, it is proven, and it can be concluded that trigonometry can be used to measure the distance, height, and width of an object that cannot be measured directly. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, thank you, Nita. I will invite for the two questioners. Please give your questions.
My name is Rahmidi Shafira, and I have a question about your poster, Nita. So my question is, what are some examples of trigonometry in astronomy?
I want to answer questions from Rahmi. Examples of applications of trigonometry in astronomy is measuring celestial objects that cannot be measured using ordinary measuring instruments, but using scales and angles, so that their size can be estimated accurately. Is it clear, Rahmi?
It's clear, Nita. Thank you for the answer.
Thank you. Next question.
Okay, Nita, thank you for the presentation. I want to ask you, my question is, do trigonometric ratios apply to all types of triangles? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Keisha. I want to answer questions from Keisha. Trigonometry is used not only for triangles, but can also be used for any triangle. The sine rule can be used to solve problems involving non-triangles. The first two angles and one side. The second two sides and an angle that is not enclosed by either side. Is it clear, Keisha?
Okay, clear, Nita. Thank you.
Thank you, Keisha. Thank you for our questions. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Nita, for the presentation and for the two questions. Now we've come to the last presenter for today. Is it correct? Afisa is the last presenter of today?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Please, Afisa, the floor is yours.
Okay, ma'am.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Let me introduce myself. My name is Afisa Salsabila Putri Harsanti with registration number 13056222045, majoring in Mathematics A of 2022. On this occasion, I will present about Pascal's triangle based on the poster I have created. Firstly, Pascal's triangle is one of a number of mathematical concepts that are so interesting and impactful in various fields, from mathematics itself to computer science, statistics, and even probability theory. But do you know how Pascal's triangle came to be? So, Blaise Pascal was born in France on June 19, 1623. In 1653, he wrote a treatise on the arithmetical triangle, which today is known as Pascal's triangle. Although other mathematicians in Persia and China had independently discovered the triangle in the 11th century, most of the properties and application of the triangle were discovered by Pascal. Now, let's move on the definition of Pascal's triangle. A Pascal triangle is a triangular array of numbers in which the numbers at the end of each row are 1, and the remaining numbers are the sum of the nearest to number in the preceding row. That gives the coefficients in the expansions of any binomial expression. The image of Pascal's triangle can be seen as follows. Pascal's triangle is a highly significant mathematical tool in the context of binomial expansion. Pascal's triangle defines the coefficients which appear in binomial expansions. Basically, binomial expansion is a method for breaking down or expanding binomial equations, such as the sum of x plus y to the power of n, where x and y are real number or variables, and n is the nth row of Pascal's triangle, and it's a non-negative integer. The formula is the sum of x plus y to the power of n equals the sum of a sub 0, x to the n, plus a sub 1, x to the n minus 1, times y, plus a sub 2, x to the n minus 2, times y squared, to a sub n minus 1, x, y to the n minus 1, plus a sub n, y to the n, where a is the coefficient. However, it's important to remember that the first row in Pascal's triangle give the power of 0 for all properties. For example, if we want to find x plus y all squared, we have to plug it into the formula. After that, to determine the coefficients, we can find them from the third row of Pascal's triangle, which means the coefficients are 1, 2, 1. So x plus y all squared is equal to x squared plus 2xy plus y squared. Likewise, from the sum of x plus y raised to the power of 3, and so on. Blaise Pascal also discovered several properties of Pascal's triangle, some of which are: each number is the sum of the two numbers above it. For example, number 2 in the third row is obtained from the addition of two numbers above it, which are 1 plus 1. Similarly, a number 4 in the fifth row is obtained from the addition of two numbers above it, which are 1 plus 3. The other property is the outside numbers are all 1, and the triangle is symmetric. This can be also seen in the picture of Pascal's triangle that has been presented. Next is the sum of the rows give the power of 2. We can observe this in the first row, where 1 is equals to 2 to the power of 0. In the second row, where 1 plus 1 equals 2, which means 2 to the power of 1. In the third row, where 1 plus 3 plus 3 plus 1 equals 8, which means 2 to the power of 3, and so on. Give the of the power of 11. We can observe this where 1 is equals to 11 to the power of 0, in the second row where 11 is equal to 11 to the power of 1, in the third row where 1331 is equal to 11 to the power of 3, and so on. Lastly, the Fibonacci series are there along diagonals. Okay, based on the material I have presented, it can be concluded that a Pascal's triangle is a triangular array of numbers in which the numbers at the end of each row are 1, and the remaining numbers are the sum of the nearest two numbers in the preceding row. Most of the properties and application of the triangle were discovered by Blaise Pascal. Pascal's triangle has various applications in mathematics, such as in algebra, probability theory, combinations, and so on. That's the end of my presentation. Hopefully, what I have said can be beneficial for all of us. I apologize for any mistakes. Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Afisa. Okay, who wants to give questions to?
Thank you for your explanations, Afisa. I want to ask to you, is Pascal's triangle considered an effective tool in calculating combinations and permutations?
Okay, thank you for the question, Kanya. Maybe we can move to the next questioner, please.
Oh, okay, baik. Afisa, I want to ask. Lumia, thank you for your presentation. It's very interesting for me. So I want to ask, can you give us example of the application of Pascal's triangle in solving everyday life problems? Is it clear, Afisa?
Okay, clear, Salsa. Thank you for the question.
Okay, thank you so much.
Let me answer the first question from Kanya. Is Pascal's triangle considered an effective tool in calculating combinations and permutations? So the answer is yes, because it provides an efficient method for determining the number of ways to choose or arrange objects. The triangle's number represent the combination. So you can quickly calculate these values without the need for repetitive calculations. This makes it a valuable tool for solving problems related to combinations and permutations in mathematics. Is it clear, Kania?
Yeah, thank you, Afisa.
Okay, thank you. Move to the second question. It's from Salsa. Can you give us example of the application of Pascal's triangle in solving everyday life problems? Okay, so the first example of the application is Pascal's triangle can be used to find the shortest path from a location with many branches. The next example is because the Pascal's triangle is also closely related to probability theory. So with Pascal's triangle, we can determine the probability of an event of the toss of several coins. Lastly, with Pascal's triangle, we can also find out the number of a subset of a set. Is it clear, Salsa?
Oh yeah, it's clear for me. Thank you, Afisa.
Thank you. Maybe that's all for me. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke, jadi semua sudah ya untuk hari ini?
Ya, ma'am, sudah.
Okay, I guess next week we will be meeting face to face. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Jadi berdasarkan schedule, minggu depan kita ketemu face to face ya?
Iya, ma'am. Betul.
Ya, jadi
dilakukan secara offline.
ya, jadi insya Allah nanti Ibu akan sampaikan materi di pertemuan kita tatap muka, pertemuan pekan depan, dan juga pertemuan setelahnya gitu. Untuk presentasi berarti masih ada berapa lagi yang belum tersisa?
Ada 14, men, yang belum.
14. Oke. Jadi sisanya 14 kita akan nanti tampilkan pada saat pertemuan online kita di pekan setelahnya. Seperti itu ya. For today's session, do you have any questions? Apakah ada pertanyaan? Okay. If you don't have, so I think this is the end of our session of today. Thank you very much for your participation. See you next week. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.